SLT එක්ක ස්පීඩ් අප් වෙන්න සුපර් ඩීල්ස් අත්විඳින්න. SLT ස්පීඩ් අප් සුපර් ඩීල්ස් සැප්තැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි.
Tonight, inconsistent policy. Policy analysts dismayed over government's actions of duplicity in energy sector.
If the next fuel is LNG, what are we talking about coal? Is this a sort of schizophrenic document that one part of the document doesn't know what the other part is?
Moody's alarm. The investor service cautions that the recent lending rate cut will add to banks' existing profitability challenges. Stable outlook. Fitch affirms Sri Lanka's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating at B. All the stories and much more coming your way on First at 9 this Friday, the 27th of September 2019.
මුහුණ සති කීපයකට කලින් ෆෑරන් ලව්ලි මෙන් ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා ෆෑනස් වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ ෆෑනස් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක වැඩි කරගන්න. ෆෑරන් ලව්ලි මෙන් ඇන්ටි මාක්ස් ක්‍රීම්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Well, a very good evening and welcome to First at 9, another AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. On your top story tonight, Professor Rohan Samarajiva laments the uncertainty imbued within investors and other relevant actors relating to the new energy policy introduced by the Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority. He was speaking at the Energy Forum 2019 organised by the Public Utilities Commission in Colombo. Professor Samarajiva was critical of the fact that even after the country took a policy decision to shift from coal to LNG, it continued to deal with coal, leading to confusion and uncertainty.
I looked at the 2019 April, the new energy policy. I was actually quite disappointed. If we look at the problems of our sector, that we have not taken timely decisions on low-cost baseload power that's needed to give stability to the system. Now, we can have all kinds of arguments about the source of the fuel and so on, but the problem of low-cost baseload power, for most people who know the sector, is critical. 2008 policy very clearly stated that the fuel of choice to solve this problem was coal. What the 2019 policy says, it says that the next fuel, in black and white terms, the next fuel will be LNG. So I read that and I said, okay, now they've got another decision. Now let's see whether we are consistent with that. Now this is the tragedy. Within the same document, there are three mentions of coal. If the next fuel is LNG, what are we talking about coal? Is this a sort of schizophrenic document that one part of the document doesn't know what the other part is? It says that land will be demarcated, will be allocated for coal. Now I'm completely confused. Because what I want is certainty, right? I may not want the fuel of my choice. But what I want is from the policy. That's the entire purpose of the policy, is to give me certainty. I'm an investor. I've got all kinds of interests in this subject. I need certainty. So give me certainty, at least in a document. If you can't make up your mind even within the document, it's basically a flawed document. So if coal is going to be put on the table now, why on earth didn't we do coal when we could do coal and we could have avoided the blackouts that we had earlier this year?
Speaking further, Professor Rohan Samarajiva questioned as to why the Ministry of Power and Energy is continually being given power over decision-making despite it failing in achieving goals included in energy policy document back in 2008.
If you go to the back of the document, which assigns responsibility for various tasks, you will see that most of the tasks have been given to the Ministry of Power and Energy. Now, I would ask, if we go back to the 2008 document and see that most of the 2008 policy has not been implemented, and that the entity that had the responsibility for implementing it, for whatever reasons, has failed. As a public policy analyst, what we see throughout the world is that there are very powerful interests that have what we call veto power. There are powerful interests in society who have economic stakes and they can stop certain things from happening, which is why you get delays. If you look at our energy policy, if you look at the implementation of energy policy in this country, you see delays. Reliance is capable of stopping certain things. Tatas are capable of stopping certain other things. But they are not necessarily capable of getting anything through. So if that is the case, why are we giving all these responsibilities back again to that same actor?
කිස කෙස යනවාද විසඳුම දින 6න් පුරාණයේ පටන් භාවිතා කරන ඉපැරණි ශාකසාර වට්ටුරුවකට අනුව නිපදවන ගානීෂා hair growth oil සියලුම ෆාමසි සහ වෙළඳ සැල් වලින්.
The Financial Crimes Investigation Division has arrested the former Director General of Sri Lanka Customs Jagat P. Vijayveera and the former Customs Additional Director General Taraka Seneviratna. The police spokesman's office said that Vijayveera was arrested at the Sri Jawaharlal Hospital and Seneviratna was arrested at the Badulla General Hospital. They are currently receiving treatment in those respective hospitals under police security. The two officials have been accused of releasing 8 kilograms of confiscated gold from the custody of the Customs Department from the enshrinement of treasure in the base ring of the Sandiru Mahasaya. UPFA parliamentarian Ranjit Siambalapitiya believes that the most prudent decision the Sri Lanka Freedom Party can take now is to support the presidential candidate nominated by the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna, as all the other options have become non-viable. He was speaking at a media briefing held in Colombo today.
Sri
Lanka Freedom Party has 4 options in the run-up to the presidential election. One of them is being neutral because we asked our followers not to use their vote during the 1988 Provincial Council election as well, but it made the party unsuccessful for a long time. The other option we have is to nominate our own candidate, but we think we are too late for that since we were not ready for it. Having our own candidate also means hindering the future of the two progressive camps. The third step is to support the candidate of the UNP or the one being selected by an alliance led by the UNP. But it's not any different than the decision we took last time. The candidate of the UNP or the one of the alliance led by the UNP can't get rid of the allegations related to the bond scam, vague economic policies, foreign agreements and on constitutional reforms. Their intention is to appoint the incumbent Prime Minister to the same position in the new government as well. We think that the best decision the SLFP can take at this moment is to support the presidential candidate of the SLPP. Our parliamentary group convenes tonight and the working committee will convene on Monday night. We will discuss with the President about this tonight.
The United National Party today stated that the election campaign to champion their candidate Mr. Sajith Premadasa in the race for presidency will kick off with the commencement of the first rally scheduled to be held on the 10th of October at the Golf Face Green. Meanwhile, the former General Secretary of the party, Tissata Nayaka, today pledged support to Sajith Premadasa, saying he is handed with various responsibilities in the election campaign.
Ending the long wait for the announcement of the presidential nominee, the UNP yesterday announced its deputy leader Sajith Premadasa as their presidential candidate. Meanwhile, former General Secretary of the UNP Tissa Attanayaka, who distanced himself from the party, has now pledged his support to the newly declared presidential contender Sajith Premadasa.
We witness a massive change in this country with the arrival of Sajith Premadasa in the race for the presidency. The change is that we see a young power taking over the political responsibility of this country and coming forward for the leadership. After I accepted his invitation, he assigned me with various responsibilities to handle his election campaign. We're now lined up to fulfill those responsibilities.
Meanwhile, members of the United National Front expressed views regarding their future plans.
We intend to submit the nominations on the 7th, followed by the rally to commence our journey towards victory at Golface Green on the 10th of October at 2 p.m. We hope to organise a rally each at every electorate of this country.
Meanwhile, Minister Ajit P. Perera moved to insist that the abolishment of the executive presidency is not just the personal want of the party's newly declared presidential contender, but the collective stance of the UNP.
We're happy about the decision. He will contest the presidential election with the approval of the parliamentary group. We will definitely win. The intellectual public will not give their mandate to a foreign citizen with a marauding history. There are shortcomings of this government, but it upheld democracy and freedom. We will introduce a new system and a new team of youth professionals to take the country forward.
SLPP's presidential hopeful Gotabaya Rajapaksa says that a collective effort is needed by all communities to address the country's national security, among other issues. He expressed these views speaking to representatives of the Muslim community in Colombo today.
A special meeting was held between representatives of the Muslim community and opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, as well as SLPP's presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. The meeting, which was held in Colombo, saw the presence of academics, businessmen and professionals within the community.
You cannot define a 10-year leadership highlighting one incident. It is unfair and wrong. We know that an incident took place in Aludgama which should not have happened. It could have been avoided. But do not forget that the situation was brought under control within 24 hours. And also remember that no country in the world has developed without the consent and blessings of the ethnic majority. We must introduce a Muslim leadership which is progressive and not allow leaders who spread racism.
ජාතිවාදී මුස්ලිම් නායකත්වයට ඉඩ දෙන්න එපා. ඒක මහ පිළිලයක්. එක මහත්මෙක් කිව්වා මම
I was portrayed as a cruel man to the Muslim community by a certain individual. I, however, was the most innocent person in my family.
මගේ අයියා මෙතන ඉන්නවා අහන්න පුළුවන්.
I do not know how I was wrongly perceived as a cruel individual amongst the public. The Sinhalese, the Tamils and the Muslims are all living in fear. Therefore, we must all come together and resolve this issue as one. Neither I nor the former Defence Secretary were in the country when the Berwala incident happened. Those behind this incident are now holding parliamentary and ministerial positions while depicting themselves as one with the Muslim community. But everyone behind this is now being revealed. I pledge that no wrong will be committed on the Muslim community under our leadership.
Meanwhile, SLPP's presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa attended the International Book Fair in Colombo today.
අනාගත ජනාධිපතිතුමාට අපේ ජය වේවා ජය වේවා
The Cabinet of Ministers have decided to appoint a subcommittee to look into salary anomalies in government institutions and recommend solutions. Meanwhile, the Presidential Commission to probe fraud and corruption in state institutes during the period from January 15, 2015 to December 31st, 2018 presented its final report to President Maithripala Sirisena yesterday. The Commission was tasked with examining complaints and allegations made against persons who had held or continue to hold political office and those who have been or continue to be public servants and officers of statutory bodies. The Commission appointed by the Head of State on the 17th of January this year was headed by retired Judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Upali Aberatna. We Republic Determination, as called by the founders, is a platform which encourages youth to be versed on the governance mechanism of the country and therefore be involved in the decision-making process as informed individuals. It was launched yesterday with 50 volunteers and it invites the participation of the country's youth to make it a giant force which can change the country for better.
We Republic, a social innovation formed to address the people's lack of understanding about Sri Lanka, in particular the core concepts of the Republic, its democracy and the Constitution, which in turn leads to many of the political, social and environmental issues. It aims to tap into the heartbeat of the youth by engaging them in the country's decision-making process, especially through educating them on essential aspects of governance mechanism and policy. Long-term solution formation to ever-lingering unresolved issues in the country is another primary target of We Republic. All in all, with approximately 1 million fresh youth set to vote in the looming presidential poll, We Republic aims to send them to polling stations as well-informed voters.
When we think about this entire We movement, as we launch this, one of the critical elements for us is to basically unite together and really think about what is the way forward. This is a crucial year for us.
The determination, as called by its creators, was launched in Colombo yesterday.
බාල දේශපාලන සාකච්ඡා අපි එක හෙලා ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරමු.
We launched a new determination with the young people of Sri Lanka. This is not just a project, but this is a collective determination to realize what we have been lost for a very long time, which is the Republic. So we will work with young people in the country to talk about, to understand, to share the knowledge about the Constitution, about the democracy, and most importantly about the voting. We urge all the young people to get together, demand from politicians, and make your own manifesto, the country you want to see in the future, and then gather more young people and make a much bigger, powerful force. We are launching with just 50 volunteers who came together to work voluntarily to launch this idea. Anyone can join, anyone can take the leadership. It's everyone's program.
Australian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, David Hawley, is concerned of Sri Lanka's water-related safety, insisting that the country should introduce standardized water safety measures to curb drowning-related incidents. He says that this is essential since Sri Lanka is in the process of opening its doors to more tourists. According to recent statistics by Sri Lanka Life Saving, the national body for life-saving and water safety activities in Sri Lanka, over 800 drowning-related incidents were reported last year alone.
Sri Lanka has been selected to host the World Conference on Drowning Prevention, which will be held between the 8th to the 10th of October 2021. The international event is expected to bring together over 800 experts and relevant stakeholders from 60-plus countries in order to mitigate drowning-related incidents, which is the third leading cause of unintentional injury death worldwide. A special event was held by Sri Lanka Life Saving and Life Saving Victoria to announce the launch of the event under the auspices of High Commissioner of Australia to Sri Lanka, David Hawley.
800 deaths a year is too many. Any death is too many. The Australian government has been working through the Australia Awards program for many years here, but I think the challenge that Sri Lanka has going ahead is that more of your country is opening up to tourists. And I have just been to the beautiful east coast of your country, and these are new grounds and new areas which tourists will be wanting to come. And so, in addition to the work that we are doing here, we are continuing to look at what work we can be looking to ensure that we have safety and drowning prevention in the areas across all of the country. So we're going to assist Sri Lanka in the second Drowning and Prevention Water Safety Report. And that's also going to introduce a new water safety app. We're going to be supporting the development of pool safety guidelines at hotels, schools and public swimming pools, as well as beach safety guidelines. We'll also help in the development of a Swim for Safety manual, and that will help standardise the teaching curriculum for school children across the country.
Also speaking at the event, Regional President of the International Life Saving Federation, Norman Farmer, spoke on the importance of the conference.
The purpose of the conference is to bring together the world's foremost experts, research, systems and information on drowning prevention, rescue, life-saving and water safety for exchange, debate and further development that aims to reduce death and injury in all aquatic environments worldwide. Asia Pacific has more than half the world's population. Asia Pacific has more than half the number of drowning deaths annually. We need to do more, and we have a great opportunity in 2021.
Indictments have been served on Avantgarde and Rakna Lanka security companies in the arms trafficking case by the Permanent High Court Trial at Bar. The High Court Trial at Bar had issued notice on the 13 defendants in the case, including Avantgarde chairman Nissanka Senadipati, to appear before the court today. The Attorney General had filed indictment comprising 7,573 charges in the case against Senadipati and other defendants. The indictment was filed before the trial at bar in Colombo High Court. The Avantgarde Maritime Services Private Limited and Rakna Arakshana Lanka Limited are also listed as defendants in the case. We will now go into a short commercial break, but make sure to stay tuned for more news right after that. Fitch Ratings has affirmed Sri Lanka's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating at B with a stable outlook. Issuing a media communique today, the rating agency said that Sri Lanka's B rating balances high government debt and contingent liabilities, a challenging external financing profile and subdued economic growth against higher human development standards and per capita income levels compared with peer medians.
According to a communique issued today, Fitch Ratings has affirmed Sri Lanka's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating at B with a stable outlook. However, as Sri Lanka is entering an election cycle with presidential elections in November this year followed by parliamentary elections in 2020, the rating agency warns that the risk of policy slippage and political tensions resurfacing closer to the elections remain high. It further noted that they expect Sri Lanka's current account deficit to narrow slightly to 3.1% of GDP in 2019 from 3.2% in 2018, as the negative impact from lower tourism earnings has been somewhat offset by a drop in imports. They also expect the current account deficit to narrow further to about 2.8% of GDP by end 2021, but there are risks to the Fitch forecast from a possible shift towards more expansionary fiscal and monetary policies or weaker than expected export performance. The rating agency noted that high government debt and large interest payments remain a key credit weakness, as Sri Lanka's gross general government debt was about 83% of GDP at end 2018, far greater than the current P median of 56.4%. It also highlighted the government's weak structure of Sri Lanka's public finances, stating interest payments as a share of revenues were high at about 44%. Furthermore, Fitch maintains a negative outlook on Sri Lanka's banking sector as they anticipate continued pressure on banks' financial profiles due to pressure from a challenging operating environment. It also observed that trend of rising non-performing loans will continue through 2019, with the sector-wide non-performing loans ratio rising to 4.8% by end June 2019.
Meanwhile, Moody's Investor Service say that Sri Lanka's recent lending rate cut will compress banks' net interest margins and add to their existing profitability challenges. Responding to central bank's move to mandate to cut lending rates on all Sri Lankan rupee-denominated loans by at least 200 basis points, the firm said that they expect banks' net interest margins to narrow since the cut's immediate effect more than offsets a more gradual decline in funding costs because of the time lag in the repricing of time deposits. It further said, quote, narrower margins will strain banks' profitability, which is already weakened because of rising credit costs and a higher effective tax rate, unquote. The business and financial services company went on to comment that they expect the negative effect on margins and profitability will be more pronounced for Bank of Ceylon because its assets yields are lower than those the other two banks. Furthermore, modest net interest margins reflects BOC's already weak profitability, while its poor asset quality has contributed to high credit costs, it further commented. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's shares ended lower today, snapping two straight gaining sessions to record their second weekly fall. The All-Share Price Index ended 0.02% down at 5,771.69, taking its weekly fall to 0.38%. The market turnover was 417 million rupees, well below this year's daily average of about 660.3 million rupees. According to index data, foreign investors were net sellers of 54.5 million rupees worth of shares today, extending the year-to-date net foreign outflow to 2.8 billion rupees of equities. The Sri Lankan rupee ended steady as month-end inward remittances were balanced by the International Monetary Fund, lowering the country's growth forecast for 2019. The rupee closed at 181 rupees 0.85 to 182 against the dollar as the rupee fell 0.41% for the week. Let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. The whistleblower whose complaint has led to an impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump is a CIA officer. US media claimed that the unnamed officer once worked at the White House. The whistleblower says senior White House officials tried to lock down all details of a phone call between Trump and the Ukrainian president. And with that, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.